All right, welcome to Culture Couch Live. Carly, Mel, Murph, how are we all going?
Hi, Rosie.
Morning, team. It's a long time since I've been on the Culture Couch. I must admit, my the little patch where I normally sit's disappeared.
No, I know. We discussed that before, Murph. You haven't been around for a while, so this will be, the viewers will be listening with bated breath for today's episode.
Yeah.
Oh, mate. Person with clients, Murph.
I know. Yeah, I've been busy, so I have been working hard with clients, and so as a result, I haven't had time. So excited to be here, Rosie and team, on the Culture Couch.
All right, you better bring some gold then, Murph, because the other's been very good, I'm telling you.
I'm feeling the pressure.
Excellent. Hey, we typically send some stuff around, obviously, with each other, and whether it's podcasts, books, videos, articles, etc., etc. And Carly, you sent a really good one around yesterday. So do you want to maybe set the scene rather than me talking about what we're going to discuss today? Maybe if you want to set the scene, because I actually found it really, really fascinating, the conversation. So fill the listeners in, and then we'll have a really good chat around it.
Yeah, so it was a clip that I saw on LinkedIn, Rosie, and it was a TED Talk. So we'll post it in the notes for this Culture Couch Live. But it was a surgeon talking to a group about, in essence, performance. So talking about, he's a surgeon, he thinks that he's at the top of his game, he knows that he does a really good job. But then he started to consider whether he was actually getting better or whether he was sort of plateauing and how much he was learning within the process. So he thought about it and he thought, well, most sporting people, if they are, in an individual kind of sport, they have a coach. So tennis players have a coach, golf players have a coach, surfers have a coach. This is where you come in. But so this surgeon said, oh, well, maybe I will ask one of my mentors who has recently retired to come and watch me do some of my procedures. And it was just really talking through that process and how much he learnt from that process. And it really related to the work we do, because obviously it talked about how important it is to have a coach. But also the second point that we really take out of it is how important it is to get constant feedback on your performance and just working through ways to do that and mechanisms to get that in place, whether you are a team or an individual in the case of this surgeon.
Yeah, it was fascinating, wasn't it? And I'd never thought exactly the way he had in terms of, here I'm a surgeon, he's obviously incredibly intelligent, incredibly good at what he does. But Murph, the way he articulated the sport, do we take that for granted a bit? You and I worked in sport a lot. And as Carly said, I'm sure he's referring not as much to team sport, because everyone knows team sport have coaches, but I just sort of sat back on my heels and thought, yeah, no, he's right, actually. Pretty much everyone that goes to the Olympics would have a coach, everyone that, world surf champions you mentioned, Cameron Smith, I'm sure, who just won the British Open. Do we take that for granted a bit, Murph, in the sporting sense?
No, I don't think the sport takes it for granted, but I think the rigor around sport and coaching and feedback conversations is so high compared to the corporate sector. And I reflected on this on the weekend, because I actually sat through both the Gold Coast Suns and the North Melbourne Football Club reviews on Monday, and just the amount of planning that goes into examining the previous game and what we take out of that, and then how we can get ready for the next game, and which athletes we have to work closely with, what feedback they'll be given at an individual, at a small group, at a team, broader team perspective. So as I was sitting there listening to the coaches from both sides, and then reflecting afterwards, it just struck me how little that we actually coach in corporate teams. Yeah. So literally sit back and talk about every player or every employee. What do we want them to do this week? Not next week or for the year. What do we want them to do this week? And who's going to speak to them? And what feedback are they? Or what conversation they're going to have with them? So, yeah, I don't think we take it for granted in sport. because the systems are set up. And we've spoken previously about how rigorous sport is in this space. But I just don't think, to be frank, I don't think senior managers take their role as coaches seriously enough. Like, they should be coaching far more than they are doing. And I suspect that most people just get caught doing the work. And I think we've discussed that previously as well.
Yeah, 100%. And Mel, it was a really specific example I found as well, as Carly set the scene. It was a surgeon that said, gee, am I getting better? And invited a mentor to come in and watch him perform a surgery, which is as similar as Murph is saying. It's really similar to what you went through yesterday, Murph, is that's the players are under that microscope. Have you seen anything like that within the workplace, Mel? And if not, why do you think that doesn't happen as often as it perhaps should?
Yeah, there's some really, really pertinent points here. I actually wrote down what this surgeon said. It's not about how good you are now, it's about how good you're going to be that matters. And it's exactly what you say. He identified that he is good. That's great. But where's he going to go? How's he going to grow when he's not getting that feedback? And it's a simple reality, and it's exactly the same in corporate. So the reality for leaders is very often they don't get feedback from their teams. There's nothing systemic that creates, the team may or may not, often not, but the leader themselves often don't get that feedback to make them a better leader. So in my experience, it's actually the third-party conversations that often create a little bit of feedback, but it doesn't get back to the individual. So that, you know who the great players are in your team. You know who's good at X, Y, Z. You know who's got the skill sets. But how often does that person get told, this is great, and how can you now extend it? So it's important that those systems are set up to have that direct feedback. And I think Jez made the point earlier, people get stuck in their roles, but your role as a leader is actually to provide feedback, to grow your team. And the awareness of that, I think, for leaders is probably not that high. And that's why they get stuck in that day to day.
It's a system, isn't it? You're right. Murph touched on that from an AFL point of view. And it's also, there's two sides to that, Carly, which Murph and Mel have touched on. There's that sort of top down, which we probably don't see enough. And I'd imagine that surgeon would probably review the case, but he would give that information to the nurse and to the assistant and all that sort of stuff. And then there's the CEO or the sales manager who's giving them. So we're talking about two totally different things, aren't we here?
Yeah, yep, we absolutely are. But this comes back to, we talked briefly beforehand, Rizzy, your point about external eyes or an external view. And I guess that's what we are as consultants. But, when you had people come in to help you at Sydney Swans, that external view was really important. It's probably worth you kind of commenting on that too, because yes, you can have set up the systems within your business to get that feedback loop happening. But what we generally see is that people struggle with that without that external help. So to get that system happening, you need those fresh eyes. And that's probably where your experience comes in from Sydney.
I reckon there's a couple of things about that. And it's someone coming in often saying you're doing things well, because even as a leader, you become overly critical. So we're not just talking about the rooms for improvement, as mainly that surgeon was talking about. We're actually saying the external set of eyes, and I've said this for a lot, I would never take on a coaching job without an external set of eyes, okay? Because they're holding me accountable as much as they are the players and the staff, et cetera, et cetera. But often, particularly if you're going to a young club, when I went to Melbourne, often it's Murph, you jump in, often it's Murph coming in as the consultant going, relax, just everything's okay. They had a really good first half. Yeah, I know, Murph, but what about the second? Yeah, but hang on, mate. So when you get an experienced person like Murph, who's been around both sport and footy, they're there also to calm you down as well. So it's not just about, telling you, oh, Rizzy, that was terrible what you did, and this is why they're losing. In those moments, it's reinforcing the positive things, Murph, too, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Because most people do most things right most of the time. We say that regularly. So helping people identify what they're doing well and then giving them, 1, 2, 3 areas for growth is so important. But I think having an external person come in, as the surgeon mentioned, just provides that, as you say, assurance or comfort that you're doing what you're doing right, and also just challenges you to think, hey, should you be doing that? And even when we, in my case, me, are challenging a CEO or an executive or a coach, I'm not necessarily saying you have to do that. All we're saying is, have you thought about trying this? And what that often does is it sparks a train of thought that might lead to something else, which then allows, you know, the coaching team or the executive team to put in place a course of action which they may not previously have thought of.
And the other thing, Ruthie, that reminds me of is when we go into sessions, a lot of teams always say at the end, oh, how do we compare to other teams?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, we always say out of 10, you know, you guys are a 7 or an 8 trying to get to a 10. Yeah. And Ruthie and I last year worked with a team that was probably, a 1?
Yeah. But
I love to know how they compare along that scale. Like, are we actually good?
And I reckon I was just going to pick that point up, because what Mel said, I'll refer back to that. It's not about where you are now. It's about where you want to get to. Now, in tennis, you've got world rankings. And in golf, you've got world rankings. I wonder what would happen to people if there was world CEO rankings, world surgeon rankings, which is your point, Carly. And Mel, I'll go to you, because I think one of the most important things for a leader is we don't expect you to know everything. And that's self-awareness. Where do you want to get to? You know, not many leaders land in a job where they go, oh, this is easy, I can do everything. I haven't met one yet. But there's a really big part of that self-awareness, Mel, isn't there, in trying to get to where you want to get to?
Yeah, absolutely. There's self-awareness is probably one of the most foundational keys for a successful leader, because they know where they are, but they also know what they're good at and what they're not good at. And that's the piece that's often missing. And that feedback is vital for improving your performance every day. It's an interesting point too, just to touch on. I think we also get asked a lot in our sessions. What is it that what approach should I take with my people? Should I be honest? Should I tell them I don't know, or should I pretend I have all the answers? I'm supposed to be the oracle for this business, and I think a good point to make here is that you don't actually need all the answers, and it's okay not to have the answers. And you'll find that the feedback from a team that develops trust and honesty. So not having the answers, having the confidence develops the integrity, and then that follows through to the team thereafter.
Oh, so just to finish off, so just pick one thing so that you've learned from a coach, or which you're now teaching, or one thing that as a coach yourself within a business that you've taught someone. All right. So we want to give a couple of practical tips, just one. So maybe Carly, you're at the top left on the Brady Bunch screen. I'll go with you. So what are the main learnings to come out, either coaching someone or being coached by someone?
The main learnings are always perspective. So you're in it and you see it the way you see it, and you're going back and forwards with what I should do, and you can never really work out what you should do. But as soon as you speak to the coach or the other person or get the feedback, it gives you perspective. So it helps guide you and helps you make that decision just from a different point of view. And perhaps that's because my profile is more collaborative, that helps me specifically. But the perspective is always what gets me to the final destination.
Yep. Merv?
There's probably a couple of things. First one is it's got to be systemized. So schedule your time, because if you don't schedule your time, you get distracted. So therefore you lose that, because all good coaching takes time. Yep. And that's, if you don't create the time, then you can't coach. So, and I'm talking from a corporate perspective, because again, if you look at the sporting teams, it's built in during the week. Yeah, it's just built in. And so from a corporate perspective, you have to build in the coaching time. And once you've done that, then I think you can then start to provide the feedback. And then the second thing I think for me is demonstrate belief in your team. I think people need their leaders and their coaches to believe in them. So give them good examples of what they're doing well and how they can, but leave them with a sense of you believe in them, because I think that's vital.
Yeah, 100%. And Mel, just to finish off.
That's a good segue, actually, Jess, because I had you back yourself, and that is exactly the follow-on from what you've just described. So the leaders and the mentors that have been behind me have said, back yourself, get in there and do the job. And that's always been phenomenal advice. And the other my own learning from it all is to get uncomfortable, because discomfort means growth. And that's okay. Real talk isn't easy, particularly at the beginning, but get uncomfortable. And that's how you go from where you are now to where you need to be.
Yeah, great point. Great. So good conversation. So Carly, being the IT genius that I am, I won't be able to put the LinkedIn with the Culture Couch slide, but that's possible for all our IT people that are watching.
We'll add the link, Ruzi, and a shout out to you for your IT skills this week. You ran a couple of meetings yesterday. Very good job.
I hosted a meeting, Murph, yesterday, and handed the hosting position over to Carly during the meeting. So
I'm sure you cut people off about 3 times and they had to reconnect and dial back in and all sorts of things.
He was very good.
No, I tell you one thing, Carly, is that Ruzi needs a coach when it comes to IT. So,
very good.
Just to finish off, Ruzi, like from my end, if you're a senior manager, an executive, or a CEO, get a coach. Just get yourself a coach. And if you're a senior manager, coach your people.
Yeah.
So get an external coach. Yeah.
If you do need a coach, call us. We're very good at coaching.
Can't help yourself, can you?
But I think the point I was trying to make, Murph, too, is it's really worth watching the video. It's quite, it's really fascinating. Even for me, who's been involved in both sport and corporate world, and I'm sure you found the same. Yeah. It was actually the way he articulated it was really good, to your point. And that's effectively what he's saying. He's saying you need a coach. If you want to get better, get some external eyes, get someone that can help you. And I think it starts with just that self-awareness. No one's expecting you to be the 99, 100% leader. That just doesn't happen. So where do you want to get to? You're here now. That's fine. Keep improving. So
don't be stagnant, Ruzi. Don't be stagnant.
Don't be stagnant, Murph.
Don't be a camper. Aim to be a climber.
All right, enough cliches, guys. Let's right.
See ya.
Thanks very much. We'll see you next week on the Culture Couch. Carly, Mel, Murph.
Cheers.
See you later.